So the former CIA director just predicted the next attack, where it's going to be and what's going to happen. So let's look at this. Lithuania is at risk. Lithuania is one of the Baltic states, if you're not familiar with. Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are just above Poland. Lithuania is at risk. CIA chief warns. Former CIA Director David Petraeus warns that Lithuania faces the highest risk of Russian invasion among NATO countries if Moscow succeeds in Ukraine. That's terrible news, and both the Lithuanians and the Poles are preparing for this. I did this video almost 3 years ago, or 2 years ago. This was about the Suwalki Gap. I did this in June, a couple years back. The Suwalki Gap is this area right here between Lithuania, and Lithuania's here, Poland's here, and there's this little enclave in Russia that is not connected to Belarus that the Russians would like to connect to the Belarus, and yeah, that could be it. Poland is actively creating defense lines on the border with Russia near Kaliningrad. That's that enclave that we were talking about. And Poland is building fortifications along its border with not just Kaliningrad, but also Belarus, digging trenches, installing anti-tank obstacles. This is part of East Shield, a national defense initiative launched by the Polish government to fortify its eastern borders. Okay, so they're serious about that. And here's Kaliningrad, Lithuania, Poland, and Belarus. And the Russians and Belarusians were going to be doing this joint exercise in Belarus, kind of on the western side a little bit. And yeah, it's a hot mess, and it's something to watch out for. Okay, now Andrew Perpetua has apparently talked about this some time before, but Russia's run out of armor, considering it uses so little at this point, relying instead on light vehicles. So this advantage that Russia currently has is speed and surprise. They can't use armor. 4,000 Russian tanks have been taken off the battlefield. They can't use it like they used to use because drones have made that untenable. The problem Russia is facing, though, is that the advantage will not last forever. Ukraine will create counters over time, meaning Russia will again be forced to pivot. But the point here is, and his solution is that artillery needs to go underground. I don't know exactly how that works, but his point was that is that Russia can pivot. What will Russia be able to pivot to once that this tactic has become played out? Like the speed on Russians on motorbikes. Okay, well that'll be so there's measures and countermeasures, and that'll be countermeasured shortly. And then where do they go? This was really interesting. The Institute for the Study of War posted this: Russian Force Generation and Technological Adaptations Update. Russian mobilization and force generation efforts. Russian recruiters continue to offer Russian recruits low quality and ineffective military training before deploying them to Ukraine. That's good for Ukraine. It's bad for those soldiers. Integration of veterans into Russian society. Russian President Putin may be setting information conditions to extend combat veteran statuses to Russian Orthodox Church Moscow Patriarchate clergy who participated in Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in apparent violation of World Orthodox canons. How about militarization of society and youth? So Russian officials approved a textbook that will teach 8th and 9th grade school children to operate drones. This is where we're going, folks. Russian command changes and change of command. Russian High Military Command reportedly removed a popular commander of an assault battalion fighting in southwestern Donetsk Oblast, sparking outrage amongst Russian servicemen and ultra-nationalists. And in Russian Defense Industrial Base continues to scale up modernization of optical systems and increased missile production amid ongoing sanctions, persistent quality issues, and manufacturing delays. They're getting 80% of their dual-use stuff from China as it is. Russian technological adaptations. Ukrainian officials and Russian mill bloggers reported that Russian first-person view, that's FPV drones armed with rocket-propelled grenades, warheads, can now reach Kharkiv city and can operate over 40 kilometers to the rear. So there's a lot going on with what Russia is doing, or in some cases not doing so well. The Kremlin is attempting to create a new command and control system to improve interoperability among Russian airspace and relevant cyber domain assets, likely in an effort to improve Russian systems in interoperability and improve Russian defenses against Ukrainian long-range drone attacks. The thing they have working against it is a culture that is stuck in the Soviet era, which is command and control. Unlike what Ukraine is doing, working very much grassroots, bottom up, trying to create all kinds of different drones, Russia is still very top down. Okay, in Sumy region, we talked about Sumy yesterday. Russian forces are targeting civilians to spread panic. Russian UAV struck a vehicle delivering bread. 5 more drones hit a farm in a village. Like, that's what the Russians are and what they do. 1,250 Russians off the battlefield. 2 tanks, because they're hard to find now. They're few and far between. 5 armored fighting vehicles, 54 artillery systems, 109 vehicles and fuel tanks. Okay. Russia launched 114 drones and missiles across Ukraine just ahead of planned peace talks, and the Ukrainians knocked down 69 Shaheds and 3 Kh-59-69 guided missiles. Russian guided aerial bomb struck and killed a 9-year-old girl in her home in Dolinka village. The attack also injured a 16-year-old boy and destroyed 1 house completely in southern Zaporizhia. This is what the Russians keep doing day over day. Overnight, drones struck Russian military positions. This is what the Ukrainians are doing to the Russians in Kursk Oblast. Russian sources claim that the strikes hit residential areas of Orysk city, causing fires and injuring 14 people. Again, the Ukrainians were targeting military positions. They don't spend their time trying to attack civilians. Explosions are heard overnight in Rylisk and Lugov, Kursk region, likely targeting Russian military positions. Local channels claim that there are lots of casualties among the Russian servicemen. Ukrainian General Staff has not yet commented on this. Okay, more of that same footage. Now, there was this other interesting article earlier with the successfully bombed Russian troops at a rail station outside Lugov and their Russian casualties. And that's just a week after hitting a fuel train north of Melitopol. Okay, and here's the image of fires, and you can see it on firms and NASA firms of fuel and munitions. Don't know what exactly they're burning down here, but apparently somebody's not happy with something Z, and that's the symbol for the Russian war. But cross direction, the Russian invaders led 38 assaults. So that's relatively low, and that goes with that relatively low number. Yesterday, I reported on this, that this is the long arm of the law. Ukraine Intelligence Directorate really went for it today, striking Russia's military systems near North Korea. I remember reading about like 6,000 miles away or something like that. I don't remember exactly how many miles it was, but yeah, that was a long way, and Ukraine still struck it. Ukrainian drone pilot took a loaded BM-21 Grad 40 rocket, erased in 1 fireball. Yeah. Now, Greg Terry reported on this. I was listening to that yesterday, and I thought it's worth talking about. Russia's earned over $883 billion from fossil fuels, and that's 3 times more than the total aid that Ukraine has received from allies and partners. And this was from the BBC. Here's how much. I mean, it's just amazing. So if you can strangle out with sanctions Russian oil, fossil fuel, oil and gas, it can have a devastating impact. Ukraine's now responsible for 40% of its own military needs. Ukraine has become a global leader in drone technology, has scaled up military equipment production by 35 times. Japan just handed Ukraine a $3 billion loan backed by frozen Russian assets. The Russians are not happy about that. They're fuming, calling it complicity in theft. Fields covered with fiber optic lines on the front lines, or it looks like they meant to do that. Like, that's just amazing. And then we see Russian sources have released footage showing the use of Chinese low-altitude laser defending system, LASS, to shoot down Ukrainian drones in the combat zone. These appear to be the first documented visuals of the Chinese laser system in operational use in Ukraine. It's really amazing. They're burning a hole through that metal. Can they do it to a moving drone in air? That's really the question. And I mean, they're trying to show that they can track it, and this is the next innovation. Finally, folks, Ukrainian high schoolers hold a graduation ceremony at a cemetery. Russian missile killed their classmate and his two siblings, and their parents survived, and that's where they are. It's pretty terrible.